and welcome back to the Legal Weekly Wine, where we discuss the week's hottest legal topics, and they are hot. We have Sean Diddy Combs, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, however you want to call him, whatever name he goes by. He has been formally indicted federally with a 3-count indictment, including a RICO indictment for racketeering conspiracy charges. Almost all of them are related to sex crimes and an enterprise related to sex crimes and trafficking. These are crazy indictments. They're extremely national. He is in jail. The judge has refused to release him on bond. So we are going to discuss this case. This is the hottest legal topic. We have another legal topic that we're going to hit that we think is the hottest one. We've had a second assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. This one, this past week, has been in Florida. There was a golf course incident. The perpetrator has been arrested. Donald Trump was not harmed. But the questions are, what crimes can this man be charged with? Why only so few, and what else can be done? So that's a huge legal issue. And we also have, we have the assassination attempt, P. Diddy. We've got Constitution Day. That has happened this week. Dr. Vile's extremely excited that, on this topic. He's written several books regarding the Constitutional Convention, so we've got to get that in today. Maybe a comment or two about the presidential debate that happened since we've last recorded. We may have to get a thing or two on that. It's been in the news. And then we have one other little thing. We've got this issue in Florida. So Florida's a hot button this week. Florida's a sheriff in Florida for Volusia County, sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, has now started posting on social media potential school shooters. So a child has been accused of showing off weapons, etc., that he is making threats for school shooting. He was arrested. He was walked into jail. He was put in jail. And the sheriff is now posting this online. So we're going to talk about some legal issues with that. Whew. Stay tuned with us. If you like any of those issues, watch the whole thing or skip to the different topics that we have. If you don't like one topic, skip to another. Sometimes we go on, but find your favorite legal topics because these are hot this week. My name is Virginia Tehrani. I'm the CEO of the Law Unscripted, which hosts this Legal Weekly Wine and the Law Unscripted podcast, as well as thelawunscripted.com. We provide bar and law school exam supplemental materials. We do studies, course studies, lectures, hypotheticals to help law students get through their exams, especially for the 8 core subjects. We also offer fun merchandise. That's going to lead me to Chelsey Rogers. She is my co-host. She's also involved with the Law Unscripted. She's also my colleague, my attorney, legal colleague in Tehrani Law LLC. We do business in Maryland, D.C., and Virginia because you never need a lawyer till you do. Chelsey, you're wearing some of our merchandise. Hello, welcome, and tell us about it.
Hi, I am so glad to be here, and I'm so excited to talk about our topics this week. And I am wearing my absolute favorite piece of our merch. I probably wear it more than I should. I'll stand up so you guys can see it. I'm in my lawyer era. Can you guys see that, or is it backwards for you?
Yes, we can. That's perfect.
Okay. I'm in my lawyer era, and I am obsessed with this shirt. Clearly, I wear it a lot. I love the color. It's so soft. Twin with me. You should get one from our merch shop.
And if you don't like that saying, we have plenty others. We've got a lot of cute and funny lawyery items in there that are for law students and others. We've got a lot of coffee sayings in there. Those are my favorites because I'm a fan of coffee. Dr. Vile, I don't think, has a shirt yet, but for those of you who can't see
I'm waiting for a tie, a Law Unscripted tie.
It's terrible. I haven't sent it, and that's on me, so I really got to work on that. For those of you who can't see him, Dr. Vile always wears a suit. Always wears a suit and tie. We even went to a competition for mock trial with him in undergrad, and a fire alarm went off in the middle of the night, and we all get downstairs, and Dr. Vile's in a suit, and one of the other coaches said something to the effect, and you can correct me, said something to the effect of, I knew it, he even sleeps in a suit. So this is the esteemed Dr. Vile. He is the Dean of the Honors College.
I think.
It is good to have you. Dean of the Honors College of Middle Tennessee State University, former mock trial coach with the American Mock Trial Association for MTSU, as well as an expert in political science, the Constitution, constitutional law, and the amending process. So you are a huge co-host, and here's one of your books. Dr. Vile, tell us what you're holding up.
This is a 2-volume revised second edition of the Constitutional Convention of 1787, a comprehensive encyclopedia of America's founding.
And you wrote this.
I did write it.
It's incredible. Everyone who doesn't know Dr. Vile, his memory is tremendous. There's a library in his head that is not fully accessed, but he gifts us with some of these books. And truly, even just in speaking and in doing some of these podcasts, you're able to tell us so many facts that I'd have to go back and look up. I mean, even dates and names and all of that. But tell us a little bit about why Constitution Day is so exciting to you, okay, why you even wanted to write these books, and what we can learn from them.
And how you celebrated.
Yes. How did you celebrate?
Okay. So start with the celebration. Each campus, by the way, if you're getting federal aid of any kind, since Robert Byrd introduced a bill 20 years or so ago, basically mandating that every such college should celebrate Constitution Day. Which is September 17th. It was a day in 1787 that the 39 of 42 remaining delegates, one by proxy, signed the Constitution in Philadelphia that we subsequently adopted. So what we do on our campus is each college has a reading, or most colleges have a reading of the Constitution. We set up a microphone outside our building. Students come in, nice. Everybody reads a different passage. I got to read the First Amendment. Which
wow.
I sort of negotiated.
Well, you also have written an encyclopedia of the First Amendment.
That's right. And there's, as I think we've talked before, there is a online First Amendment encyclopedia with over, I think, 1,700 and 1,800 entries that's totally free for use, just First Amendment encyclopedia. And if we're missing something, let us know. Because yes. Almost every week I add an entry or two. We're starting to do book reviews of First Amendment issues. So someone listening has written a new book on the First Amendment. We'd love to have that as well.
Yes.
But our primary thing yesterday, and we distributed red, white, and blue cupcakes to people who participated. And then yesterday, we hosted former Vice President Mike Pence for close to a 2-hour presentation.
I'm
and
so
I must
jealous.
tell you, I was very impressed. He was thoughtful. He was respectful, nice. Credible. My opinion of him rose substantially. He took questions that I had helped others, formulate from a moderator from our American Democracy Project, but he also took questions from the audience, and some were fairly hostile. And yet he was always able to say something like, I see that you're passionate, I appreciate your enthusiasm, and answered very respectfully without, as far as I could tell, it was interesting. He seems to have, in contrast to a lot of politicians, he seems to have some core values which are not exactly au courant, particularly when it comes to traditional families and whatever. And yet he would state his position, and then, was also, didn't seem to be out to demonize other people. So we had we had a major auditorium with a balcony completely full.
Wow.
And that was even though people had to go through metal detectors and the sort of things that we are now coming to expect with these kind of events. But I think it was as successful an event as we have had. If I can put a plug in for MTSU.
Please.
One of the reasons we did wait, Pence had tried for the Republican nomination, and we try not. I mean, if somebody asked to come to our campus, it's basically open to both sides, and so we would host them. But we wouldn't typically issue an invitation to someone who's an active candidate, because we're not, Constitution Day is supposed to be above political parties. And where was I headed? Okay.
Not sure.
Well, we invited him as a nonpartisan candidate, and I don't know where I was headed, and it'll probably come back to me. My apologies.
We can come back on it.
My mind, although it retains a lot of facts, has become almost as cluttered as my actual library. And if any realtors are listening in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, I am still looking for a library with a house attached. I have a house with a library attached, but it is increasingly inadequate to my needs, even though it has aisles in it, which I think is relatively unusual for a home library.
I can
Other than
testify
I believe
to that.
John Adams's may, if I remember. It's been several years since I visited there, but he has a very nice library.
As someone who has personally seen your library attached to your house, it is amazing. They had it built. They had an architect out to design it and build it, and it is extremely full. So,
and there is a reason, by the way,
yes.
that there's a picture behind me, and that is because I don't want people calling the fire department or, worry that I'm going to die in a book slide or a paper avalanche. Neither, as far as I know, there are no bodies under all the books in my office, although it probably would adequately cover any number of them.
Yeah, though we have found a sandwich or two.
Well, on my desk, yes, occasionally you will find a sandwich or two.
Uneaten, half-eaten, you get busy. It's amazing.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got that, and truly another plug for MTSU. Either while I was there or shortly after I attended, Al Gore came to MTSU. So a Democrat vice president under Obama. No, not under Obama.
He actually taught a course, and I assisted with
under
that
Clinton.
course.
Thank you. So sorry. Under Clinton, yes, and he actually taught a full, like you're saying, taught a full course.
Yes. And that now I do remember where I was headed. One of the reasons that we invited Pence, one was, frankly, I think, and I think most people on our campus think that what he did, he did his job in 2021 when he was urged to do otherwise. But what fascinates us about him, we have one of my members of the Board of Visitors is Jeff Worley, who's a businessman from Indianapolis, that area. And years ago, he told us that we should invite Mike Pence here, even before he became vice president. And we didn't at the time. But what's impressive about him is he knows Dr. James Buchanan. Well, he has read several of Dr. James Buchanan's books. Dr. Buchanan was a MTSU graduate, wouldn't call MTSU at the time, but a graduate from here who won a Nobel Prize in economics, I believe, in 1986. And his work, he has founded a whole school of thought called public choice, which sort of combines politics and economics. And frankly, it's not the easiest. Some of his concepts are very basic, but they're not the kind of thing that most politicians would have read.
Right.
And we were very impressed, to get an active politician who is actually familiar with the works of a Nobel Prize winning economist, and thinks that it actually had a major influence on his own thinking. So that was a special reason to invite him to our campus.
And James Buchanan is also the founder of a scholarship in his name for MTSU
Well, that's right. Our largest academic scholarship for both for incoming freshmen and for incoming transfers is named the James Buchanan Fellowship, and so we have close ties to him, and it's just sort of unusual to find somebody, especially from another state, another school, who's familiar, with. Many economists would obviously be familiar with Buchanan, but you don't expect politicians necessarily to do so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. That's our bit on Constitution Day. Let's transfer to something that's not as enjoyable and exciting and happy occasion. It's going to be hard to talk about this, so bear with us, everybody. But let's talk, legally speaking, about what's happening with Sean Diddy Combs. So we are transferring to that. We've got an indictment, a 3-count federal indictment against him, basically for sex trafficking. I've got some more pieces of information and specifics that we're going to talk about. But this has come, Dr. Val, you know a little bit about there. In March, there were some search warrants, at least one search warrant that was conducted.
That's
Do
right.
you remember?
For both properties, I believe, one in Florida, maybe, and one in California.
Okay.
And at the time, he was portraying, so, I don't know what's going on here, what's happening. But as you say, seems to be related to sex trafficking and those kind of offenses.
And Chelsey, did you keep up with the civil lawsuits? We end up doing, we have not done any related to Diddy. So let me just put that out there. But do you remember the civil lawsuits that were started against him basically within that same time period of the search warrants related to sex trafficking?
Yes, I don't know the specifics of it, but I mean, it's what is laid out now in the criminal indictment seem to be very, very similar to the civil complaints that were alleged. That, like, just what the facts that are being alleged are. I think the indictment seemed pretty scathing.
Yeah.
I'm not super familiar with the counts as they're laid out in the civil lawsuits, but it seems like this has been an investigation for quite some time.
It does. These indictments were not done overnight, clearly. In reading the 3-count federal indictment, this was a long and extended federal investigation. And my guess is it was the extent of investigation by a federal grand jury, not for one day, but a sitting investigative grand jury that likely heard evidence over months, 6 months, a year, something to that effect, as they gathered the information. This is very similar in my mind, not in terms of what was charged, but how this came about, to the indictments in Georgia against Donald Trump. In those, if you've been following along with the Legal Weekly Wine, Donald Trump was indicted for RICO violations, for racketeering.
But not sexual offenses.
Correct. Correct.
Nothing
sexual for Donald Trump. So,
well, there's a sexual harassment,
correct,
which is in the New York case, different case.
Yes. So the sexual issues with Donald Trump were the E. Jean Carroll case, which was a civil case alleging sexual abuse, which he was found liable on. There's also the Stormy Daniels issue for the hush money case, alleging that she had sex with Donald Trump and he tried to cover it up. But in terms of the RICO, this racketeering indictment, that was for election interference, and that is what's pending in Georgia. But the same type of statute is being used. That's a state RICO one. This one's a federal RICO one, and it's for basically sex trafficking, transportation to engage in prostitution and racketeering. It's alleging a vast conspiracy with
help me here,
the
Virginia.
Ringleader. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Harvey Weinstein, is that a similar prosecution there?
That's great comparison.
Okay, but there's another figure out there. Remember who's
Epstein?
Yeah, Epstein, and that's all
Maxwell.
very similar, right?
Yes. Very similar type of enterprises, of the idea of a large figurehead, a very popular and well-known figurehead who is arranging sexual encounters among other people of influence, whether that's, actually obtaining people to perform sexual actions, flying and transporting them to these places for this behavior, and providing people who want the sexual acts. And that's what's being alleged against Diddy.
And videotaping it, apparently.
Oh my gosh. If you ever wanted evidence, Chelsey, I mean, in our regular day-to-day business, what's the best evidence we have?
I mean, right. Did we do any accidents? We have dash cams. We have any sort of thing like this. It seems, again, from what innocent until proven guilty, right?
Yes, absolutely.
However, from what they're alleging, again, it looks like this is a pretty substantial investigation. It seems like there would be a lot of witnesses to testify, because this is alleging that this has taken place over a long period of time. Lots of people involved. lots of people who are paid and trafficked and drugs and cleaned up after. It seems like it does seem like there's a big conspiracy here. Like this was a network. I don't know if I even have the right word for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what RICO is a network, an organization that is specifically set up to engage in criminal activity. Like the mafia. That's the most common idea is, you've got the mob boss, the godfather who's arranging crimes. They're doing, drugs, prostitution, etc. But now it's like, okay, here's Diddy, like the mafia boss, who's arranging for crimes, especially sexual related crimes, including drugs and alcohol. But like you said, I mean, it feels nasty to even say some of these things out loud, but they're alleging these things I've never heard of called freak-offs that were occurring, where allegedly they hired or coerced or forced sex performers.
Or drugged into complacency. I think that.
Yeah, to be drugged and coerced into extended sexual acts with male sexual workers. And it's just disgusting. And over periods of days, at times, and you're thinking, who's involved? And I think kind of like Epstein and Weinstein is who's going to be named. This is going to go beyond Diddy. Is who is going to come out as the people who were engaged in this with him? It's his employees, it sounds like, a lot of people in his businesses, but what other famous figures are going to be named? Are we looking for these Epstein reports that are going to be now the Diddy reports? What's coming out as who will be named as the people who bought these traffickers, the people who were trafficked and paid for. So it's, quote, okay, so it's a decades-long activity, criminal enterprise of abuse, threats, coercion of women and others, quote, to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. And another quote from the indictment, creating a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other crimes, sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice.
The arson seems wild. It makes you that seems slightly out of place in the list of those charges.
Probably destruction of evidence, maybe?
That's what I was thinking.
Gotta be.
Arson is so specific.
Yeah, and usually...
Or unless it's a threat.
Oh,
burn somebody's house down or
that's interesting.
Property. But I don't know.
Right,
and I don't either. Sense. Because arson generally is the destruction of a building, a full structure for that term.
I learned that during our bar prep. I didn't know that before. Somehow I made out of law school without learning that. We learned that during bar prep. The
dangers of wealth and power reminds me one of Plato's dialogues. Talks about the worst people are the tyrants.
Yes.
Because instead of being corrected, they go into eternity with no correction and they've committed the worst abuses. And if there's an afterlife, better to be a humble peasant somewhere and never have had the temptation than, this is sort of a warning. I don't know how many teen listeners you have here.
Right.
Other than Chelsey, maybe.
We both look like teens and we're not.
I'm just a teenage girl.
But, the figures, the pop culture figures may or may not be good role models another way. Right. You can be a great rapper or a great singer or whatever and not necessarily. And I noticed this week that Donald Trump has suddenly said that he hates Taylor Swift. I can't imagine why,
Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah, Chelsey, you were just dying to say why. Why does he hate Taylor Swift?
Well, first
great transition.
Great transition. And also that is the inspo for our shirt being in the lawyer era that I am wearing. As a big surprise to no one, I am a fan of Taylor Swift. I love her music a lot. She was the second concert I ever went to back when she was when she was playing in Columbus, Georgia, and had 2 albums about 1.5 million years ago.
Was this child labor at the time?
Right? Okay, backtrack since we last recorded. We had the debate last Tuesday, right? It feels like that was a lifetime ago.
It was.
In the news cycle, but it was only last Tuesday. And shortly after the debate, Taylor Swift publicly endorsed Kamala Harris. I wasn't shocked by this. I feel like I knew it was coming. If you paid attention to her for any period of time, that I didn't think that was a shocking revelation. Apparently, people on Fox News disagree with me. And very shortly after that endorsement, on Truth Social, I believe, I don't think it was X, I think it was Truth Social, the former president, Donald Trump, tweeted in all caps with multiple exclamation points, "I hate Taylor Swift."
That's not a good move. I know she didn't endorse it, but it's not a good move.
It's a free country. You can hate who you want, but it does seem weird to say it out loud, and then write it and then share it. I don't know what the intent doing that could have been. What is the purpose?
Well, and you said it wasn't a surprise that she endorsed somebody. It's less of a she was in a way almost pushed into it, as I understand.
Yes, because
I don't know that President Trump himself directly did it, but media were in fact using her or memes of her claiming that she was supporting him.
Yes, it was these AI generated.
She may very well have felt,
that's what she said. Is she felt she needed to step in to make the truth come out for what she wanted to do and believed.
Right. But I think had that not come out, I don't think a celebrity has an obligation.
No.
I like Taylor Swift's music, but it's not going to make any difference to me.
How she votes.
But, you at the very least, you can say something. Well, I'm very disappointed. I'm a fan of her music. Do something to connect with, millions of people who are her fans.
Exactly. I think that would have been the more positive role. But as we know, he's not a very positive guy.
And this came out in the debates, if you want another transition.
It did. Oh, my goodness. Go ahead.
Well, I have a... Has it been published or not? I'm trying... Okay. It has. I have a book. I have a couple of books on presidential rhetoric, and one of them hasn't been published yet. But one that I published is inaugural addresses, and his address is often referred to as American Carnage.
And I gave it a different title. This is the 2016 election when Donald Trump was elected president.
Right, when he was elected. He didn't come, by the way, to the 2021
inauguration,
ceremony, which is one of the few modern presidents who has not. But, he has this... Basically, his message is that America is going into the hell in a handbasket, and only he can save it.
Right.
And, it's one thing to say... And actually, one of the things that I really admired about Pence yesterday is... He basically said, we're a good people. We're an enterprising people. We're a moral people. We're a generous people. And I think we're falling short here, and I wish we did that. But he wasn't, you could almost take what Trump says and put it in the mouth of any of America's adversaries, and we would say, well, that's appalling that somebody would say that about America. Right. America doesn't depend... even Abraham Lincoln, as great as he was, America was more than Lincoln. It's not any one Washington, particular leader. It's we the people. That's how the Constitution that we're celebrating begins.
Mm-hmm. Well, I got to pick up on that with all of it, because a lot of it's, First Amendment. Let's go back to that, is the right for the freedom of speech. So Trump has his right to say that. Taylor Swift has her right to say it. I personally, no offense to anybody else, but I personally loved her dig at JD Vance with the
childless cat lady. That was a mic drop moment.
Right, with the picture with her cat. To me, I love, and Dr. Vile should appreciate this. When I was in my trial with him, we learned the concept of looping, where you start with something, you come back to it, you continue to bring it back and loop it into the conversation where it's not just one thing. And that was a brilliant concept of looping, use of the concept of looping, where she's like, okay, J.D. Vance said, these women without children are childless cat ladies who shouldn't be involved in politics and the country. And she comes back and loops it into her own message, which, again, trial advocacy, it was such a strong message. Like you said, a mic drop moment, and the concept of looping of, here I am, a childless cat lady, signed a childless cat lady. But the other thing about cats, and I don't want to go too far on it because we'll go down a rabbit hole, but honest to goodness, with the debates, we have to talk about cats and pets. And Donald Trump's claims that Haitian alleged illegal immigrants in a specific town are eating it. What was the quote? It was something to the effect
they're eating the cats and dogs.
The cats. They're eating the dogs. They're eating your pets. Yes. Dr. Val, has there been, I'm not trying to be too political here, but legally speaking, we go on evidence, right? And Chelsey, right, you're involved in this, and we look for evidence. Is there any proof that you can find or see in the media or otherwise?
Apparently,
this is happening?
Apparently there was a post a couple weeks back of someone who said their cat was missing or whatever, and they suspected, or maybe immigrants around, but according to the mayor, according to anybody, nobody. I mean, it's one of those things Vance can say, and he's the one sort of Vance has sort of followed up.
Like,
He can say, well, nobody can disprove it, and I suppose that's true. I mean, but the original report was somebody's kitten was missing, and they actually saw it strung up, being butchered, much like you would butcher a hog or something. And there's no evidence for that, as far as I can tell. I mean, it's this is why we have such strong evidentiary rules against hearsay. And this is probably double or triple
hearsay within hearsay. I heard it from a friend
on the
who
net
saw this.
It was a Facebook.
Somebody from a town I've never been to, who I never know, has alleged that this might have happened to a cat that I've never seen either. I mean, it's just on and on. And
Chelsey, you went down this rabbit hole.
Of course I did, because I had to know where it was coming from. That was the first thing. I mean, there was a lot of things we could have fact checked in that, but of course this is like one of the more outrageous moments of the debate. And so I went down the rabbit hole. So this originated from 2 social media posts, and then there was a statement at a city council meeting. So the original 2 posts, which were not the same person, someone said that their daughter's neighbor's friend, essentially,
like Dr.
Double hearsay.
Mm-hmm.
And she has now come out on the national news and said she apologizes. She feels really bad about how this all played out. And there was a second post of a Black man holding what appears to be a goose, unrelated post. And they're saying, oh, they're getting these geese from the parks. We don't know who this person is or any of it. And then there was someone who stood and made this complaint at a city council meeting in Springfield, and again, cannot be substantiated, essentially is what it comes down to. And so it has created this strange hubbub. I don't even know the word for it. Like I mean, mass
frenzy.
Hysteria.
Yeah.
But there's no real evidence of it.
But by the way, when I heard the news that geese were involved, I immediately thought of some of my kinfolk. Who, if we saw a loose duck or goose, we might very well have.
Well, and I even think of my grandfather shooting the groundhogs in the gardens, and these things. But I have to say, on a personal level, for whoever cares about my own personal thoughts, which nobody does, but I have rarely found such hilarity. And it's not a funny thing, but people have really picked up. This has gone viral, and people have used his quotes from the debate to make a lot of memes, to make a lot of TikTok videos. And okay, do you remember Bernie Sanders and the gloves?
Yes.
That was one of
Bernie
my
memes.
favorite hilarious moments in all of American history. And I'm still chuckling about the Bernie Sanders memes and TikToks with him in the gloves at Inauguration Day when he lost the election. And it was so funny. And now we've gotten this, and it was like, oh, my 2 favorite political memes and ideas. And for those of you who haven't seen it, I personally found a lot of humor in the TikTok videos where people are, with the stove not actually on and the oven and the grill's not actually on, putting their own pets in, in pots and pans and in the ovens, with the, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, and oh my gosh. And they're putting the pets in and putting salt and pepper on the pets and the pots and pans. And I tell you, at 1 o'clock in the morning when I've been wide awake, this is what I've been engaging in, is watching these videos.
But to take it back to a serious note.
Please, I apologize.
Well, no, and I mean, it's funny, but it plays into racial and foreign stereotypes.
Absolutely.
That go back thousands of years.
Absolutely.
Early Christians were accused of literally drinking the blood of, whatever. Jews in the Middle Ages were accused by Christians of drinking the blood of children.
Right.
And, and I believe there's just a little bit of truth, right? There are some cultures, I believe, that do eat dogs.
Yes. Some Asian cultures apparently do this sometimes.
Actually, and I don't want to name the country because
correct.
But there was an Olympics in a country, and apparently there had been street vendors who would sell dog meat, and they moved them up because they realized that this was highly offensive, to other cultures.
Yeah.
But it just plays into the very here we have the Statue of Liberty, that says, bring us your huddled masses. The refuse of the world, and we'll make, they'll make something of themselves here. And, and we're going to go around. It's just below us as a people.
Yeah.
I mean, it is not representative. And one just hates to think what other people in other countries think about us when they see this kind of thing getting any kind of traction. Yeah. And it was interesting. They cut the mics, but you could see in the debate, this was one time where Harris did almost begin just laughing out loud, that it was like, really, you're going to go, you're going to hand this to me on a silver platter?
Right, we'll use it.
The most incredible thing about the debate was the way that she was able to goad him, and he didn't have enough discipline. Particularly when it came to
the rally size.
When you saw the crowds, when she mentioned crowd size, you knew he was going to blow up, and he did. Right. And when she mentioned the Wharton School, that's where he graduated. Wharton economist, and how she really played him like a fiddle.
Yeah. But there are claims, and this is interesting, there are claims now that she possibly had a mic in her ear. I don't know what's going to happen. And this is, again, where we go back to the evidence. Let's see what evidence comes out. Maybe they're right. I would like to think she didn't. That's my own personal hope, but I don't know. And again,
I don't think she needed them. I mean, she's been a prosecutor, right?
And a prosecutor, she sounded like one at the debate. General, she's skilled in debate.
Did you need a mic in your ear when we made you give mock trial speeches from memory?
Oh my goodness,
of course not,
and
right?
In my own trials, I don't need a mic. Yeah. You just listen and you respond.
Right. Don't believe her. I'm actually sitting in the audience, whispering the answers in Virginia's ear when she's at trial. That's what's happening, guys. You caught us.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, Trump needed the mic in his own ear.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody, please don't go there.
Please don't say
don't
that.
do this to yourself.
Yeah.
It was infuriating a toddler. It truly blew my mind. One, I think there's a lot you can say about the debate. I do think there were a couple times she really did sound like a prosecutor in a lot of ways. There were
good
a couple
and bad. Yeah.
Yeah. There were a couple times where she just sounded so much obviously she's a lawyer, but there were just a couple times that I was like, that just sounds like such a lawyer thing to say. But she really did you have a small crowd at your rallies, and this man lost it. He lost it. And she knew he was going to do it. Everybody knew he was going to do it. And the fact that he did not have enough self-control.
Yeah.
So, by the way,
yes,
is this a national? When I hear a local advertisement, but have you seen the we've talked about this, the advertisement for the Wesley Financial, I believe it is, or Wesley Group that tries to get people out of timeshares?
Oh, I have not recently.
Okay, well, he basically, call him if you're in a timeshare, if it was misrepresented, if you can no longer pay, he's going to get you out of it. And I don't know if there was a suit against him or not, but he now has one where he says, I am not an attorney. I have never wanted to be an attorney. I do not even like attorneys. If you call us, you will not get to an attorney, but we can get you out of your timeshare.
He must have been sued.
Well, that's what I'm guessing, but it's I don't think a lot of lawyers are going to give him a call to get out of timeshares.
No, we could get ourselves out if we had to, if we even entered them. Okay, so let's go to for another very serious topic. Let's talk about Donald Trump, but in terms of the second alleged assassination attempt. This is very scary. As much as we're being lighthearted and making fun of the debates and things that he's said, it is not okay for anyone to be enacting violence, either against this Haitian population or our former president, Donald Trump. We do not advocate violence of any kind, even for political reasons. So,
especially for political reasons.
Exactly.
I was going to say,
they almost
not in America,
yeah.
right? That this is a country of free speech and democracy, and this is what we're trying to uphold. So, I am absolutely, this is abhorrent that we've got even one and now two potential, shooters for Donald Trump trying to assassinate him. Dr. Vial, tell us a little bit about what we know for this second alleged assassination attempt in Florida this last week.
Well, and let's go back to the first one a minute, because although Trump, had his ear clipped, somebody actually died.
Yes.
Somebody in the audience was killed, as was the shooter very quickly. And, both of these involve, and some listeners are going to correct me on, I don't know if semi-automatic or what the term is, but both had a very high-powered round rifles that they used or intended to use. But remind me of your specific question in regard to
the alleged facts of what's happened with the second assassination attempt.
Right. I mean, the second one, and this is in some ways remarkable. And a Secret Service agent. So Trump is out on a golf course, and apparently this has long been a concern. And he's not, by the way, the only president who's played golf and done it a lot during presidency.
Right.
But golf courses, by their very nature, there's two things about them. One is they're very large.
Yes.
Often they have trees to provide hiding places. And probably most importantly of all, when you play golf, you play it through a succession of holes. So, if somebody's gotten to the 8th hole, then it's not going to be long before they get to the 10th hole or whatever.
There's a succession.
And so the allegation, and by the way, it's a true citizen hero here. I don't know that she, and it is a woman, by the way. I don't know if she wants her name, but basically you have someone who waited apparently for 12 hours, had a gun poked through a fence, and is it the 10th hole or 8th hole? I can't remember which it is. But pointed toward there, he has two pieces of armor basically up and a what do you call it?
A GoPro.
GoPros to record what he's doing. And one of the agents apparently sees, and this cannot have been easy, and I'm guessing maybe he had binoculars or something, but he sees what he appears to be a gun poking through the fence. He fires the guy leaves, and here's where the citizen comes in.
Yeah.
Citizen sees this guy. Now, he left the gun behind, but
Left
they
everything.
see this
Yeah.
citizen, or they see this person running out of the golf course, which maybe they know belongs to Trump, and they had the state of mind to take a picture of the car and the license plate, and they don't find the guy till he's 50 miles or so away on the interstate. And they do it basically because the citizen said, enough, or, this might be
This
of
dude
interest.
look weird. Yeah.
I mean, that is truly a national hero.
Yeah.
And when you, what is it? When you see something, say
Say
something.
something.
That's on the
That's
metro
important.
all over the DC area that we ride all the time. Is if you see
Yeah.
something, say something. Same with airports. Now, Chelsey, let me get to you. What charges have been brought against this man? I mean, it seems like an attempted assassination, but the charges don't reflect that.
Well, right. Because here's the thing. What makes it an attempt? Like, this is what the question is, because our facts right now seem that, from what we know, now obviously there's an investigation, it doesn't seem like he fired the rifle.
Right.
So he was setting up, like he's taking these steps to do that, but he didn't. It wasn't like he shot and he missed. Seems like I said, what we know right now is that it doesn't seem like he fired the gun. So he's being charged, and this man is an older gentleman who has a pretty significant
58, I think.
Right.
a pretty significant criminal history. From my understanding, there's
At
felonies,
least
there's
one
misdemeanors.
felony. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's being charged with essentially gun charges. And I don't know if you have the exact counts, but that's what it basically is
And they're
some
federal
felony.
charges, right? Probably
Correct.
one is probably taking a gun across state lines.
Yes.
And the other, I think, is basically a
felon in
firearm
possession.
with a felon in possession of a firearm. 2 federal charges in Florida, but it's just the gun charges. So Chelsey, why? Why just gun charges? This seems so. I mean, it's good that we have the gun charges, but it doesn't seem like enough for someone who was preparing to try to assassinate former President Donald Trump.
Or so we think. He's
Right,
still
who
Right.
appears to have been, for all intents and purposes.
See, and this is where it's hard, especially with us having the limited information we do, because we don't necessarily know. That's going to be a big question. What was the intent? We're assuming what it is. I don't think there's much of a debate, but you're like, he didn't even fire the gun. Like, was that enough? Like, was that a substantial step? Like, at what point are we saying it makes an attempt? And I think that's the difficult question.
May I add a historical footnote?
Please.
Which I haven't seen in the news, and you won't remember. But in 1968, when Robert Kennedy was assassinated,
Was he the governor or a senator of Florida? Remind me.
He was a senator from New York, brother, of course, of President John Kennedy. Sirhan was motivated in part by an answer that Kennedy gave as to the Middle East in a debate. And most people thought that Kennedy had beaten McCarthy in this debate. He went on to win the primary. And Sirhan was so inflamed by basically a pro-Israel stance. And I don't know the trigger for this man, for Trump, but we know that he was very invested in Ukraine. And noticeably, I mean, one of the, to me, a rather shocking aspect of the debate was that Kamala Harris was very, very clear. We have to support NATO. We have to support Ukraine.
Right.
Our defense is theirs. And Trump refused to say which side he wanted to win.
He just said he wanted
the
to
most
end
positive
the war.
spin on that I actually heard yesterday with Mike Pence, and I wasn't completely convinced by it, but he said, well, that was just Trump trying to keep his options open, that if he's president, he comes in looking more as a neutral party than as one side or the other. And that's as good a defense I can think of. But it would be interesting, usually you think of presidential races largely being decided by domestic, abortion, taxes, those kind of Social Security, those kind of things, rather than by a foreign policy issue. And again, I don't know that was his motivation, but that seems to be his greatest political concern prior to this.
Yeah, he apparently published a book stating before this, sometime a year or two ago, apparently stating that he had voted for Trump, but was very displeased and regretful of doing so based on, I believe it was Trump pulling out of the Iran nuclear agreement or nuclear pact. Is that correct?
He did pull out of it, so it may have been.
Right. So I believe his anger at Trump, at least in terms of the book, was related to that. And he has had a lot of affairs with Ukraine and with the other, outside of our own country. So it seems to be motivated by that. But who knows? I mean, we don't know yet.
Well, we shouldn't ever read too much into an assassination.
Right.
In the sense that this could, and I was really disappointed in Vance saying, well, it's got to be Republican or it got to be Democratic rhetoric because both have been against Democrats. Well, that's certainly not been true in presidential. Robert Kennedy, John Kennedy were both Democrats.
And Lincoln, we've got, in violence,
in any event, the first time, I think Trump got it right. He basically said, we got a maniac out there. That's it. Second time, he's trying to blame, and Vance even more than him is trying to blame this on rhetoric. Well, the rhetoric, in my judgment, the rhetoric has been far more negative from the Republican than from the Democrat side.
A little more incendiary.
If you think otherwise, it's hardly been limited to one party. I mean, Trump has constantly accused his opponents of being fascist. Right. He's constantly accused Harris of being dumb.
He talks about violence frequently. He
has actually emboldened in his audiences. Yeah. He's actually said, beat him up, I'll pay for your legal bills. Or
I could shoot somebody in the middle of the street. And
again, I'm not even saying that he's responsible for these people who shot. I'm not saying his rhetoric did that, but he's also the one who is claiming that his rhetoric had nothing to do with the attack on the Capitol,
right?
Which did result in deaths,
right, on both sides.
I just think talk about rabbit holes. Here is where you have the chance to show. I mean, what he did well in the first one, right? Now, I'm not sure I'd say fight, but I like the notion of, you stand up after somebody, you don't shirk, you put up your fist and say, onward and forward.
Here we
That's
go, yeah.
good.
Absolutely.
You talked, I think, about Theodore Roosevelt, giving an hour speech after he
was shot.
Yeah, I mean, stupid, but
shows strength.
Shows strength of character. But to start saying, oh, it's my, absent an opponent who's calling for your elimination, which I don't think you're going to find on either side.
Right.
That's just not. It doesn't show magnanimity.
No.
It's just to even use an assassination attempt against you as a way of scoring political points against an opponent just does not seem to be a very healthy place to go.
I wish. And I'm not anybody who's watched this podcast for 4 seconds knows how I feel about Trump. But this is gross. I hate political violence. I wish, and I think maybe because, again, the first presidential election I could vote in was 2016.
Right.
I wish we could just turn the temperature down of what politics seems to have become. I just wish we could turn it down. I don't think there should ever be violence in politics. I also don't really like, and both sides are saying this at this point, is that person's a threat to democracy. I just want to bring the temperature down and talk about policy. I feel like if we could just bring the temperature of the room down, but I don't think that's likely to happen.
May I mention a book?
Please.
Yes, please.
Okay, so I just read, and it's been out for a while, so I'm a little behind. Stephen Levitsky, Daniel Ziblatt, I believe they're both Yale's. How Democracies Die. And this is also, I've read another book which I reviewed for a publisher. It didn't publish yet, but on the decline of political norms in the United States, particularly in Congress. People yelling out, "You lie," during a presidential speech, or, some of the clownish behavior. So they give, and this was written obviously before these assassination attempts, 4 key indications of what they call authoritarian behavior. One is rejection or weak commitment to democratic rules of the game, like person that gets the highest number of votes wins election. Denial of the legitimacy of political opponents, calling them fascist. Toleration or encouragement of violence, and they particularly cite, having rallies in which you say, "Go beat the guy up." And then readiness to curtail civil liberties of opponents, including the media. And how many times have we heard over the last 8 years, this is fake news? The biggest losers here are the people at the back that are, they're not going to do this. They're reporting this. They're misreporting this. These are behaviors that characterize the kind of country that we do not want to be, that we usually laugh at or scorn. And we really do live in a perilous time in terms of, and again, it happens on both sides.
Right. Potential political violence.
Yes. And again, you could have a country where everybody sat down and had tea as they had discussions instead of debates, and you'd still have nuts out there with access to automatic weapons, who could for crazy reasons try to kill somebody.
Yeah.
And that's,
and with that, I mean, it's interesting because DeSantis, from Florida, governor of Florida, has issued his statement that, the Fed shouldn't be involved in prosecuting the assassination attempt against Trump because they're prosecuting Trump. And he stated, which I strongly agree with, of the state should bring its own charges. Absolutely. It's not an issue.
They can do that. Dual federalism.
You can have cases in federal court and cases in state court for the same actions, but different charges in different jurisdictions. That can be brought at the same time.
DeSantis also ran against him, so he might have his own bias.
Which is interesting. I mean, there's that conflict of interest as well, as he ran against Trump. But the interesting thing is they're going to charge, allegedly, for attempted murder. Attempted first-degree murder, which is what assassination would be called, is premeditated murder, right? Where you have a plan, you lie in wait for hours at a golf course. Yes, Dr. Viles appreciating my grammar correction. So these are actions of premeditated murder. And the interesting thing, Chelsey, I'm going to go back to your comment of, okay, so the feds didn't charge it, but why is the state? Because there's the issue of if it were conspiracy. And in this instance, it does not yet appear, maybe won't at all, that he actually engaged with any other person, that it seems to be his own sole idea and plan and carrying out of the plan, which would not be a conspiracy, because under conspiracy law, it has to be with at least one other person. It can't be a sole idea or attempt. So in this case, it doesn't seem appropriate to do conspiracy. And if you did conspiracy, it would be just a substantial act or an act in furtherance of the conspiracy. But for attempt, we're looking at an actual action to attempt the murder, not just a plan.
Right.
But an actual attempt. So I don't personally see, unless there's specific federal law, and I'm not a federal, or Florida law, we're not Florida attorneys.
No.
But if there's a specific Florida law, maybe they can achieve this. But I think there's going to be a difficulty with the attempted murder charge, which I think is why the feds haven't charged it, is because thank God, he never actually fired. There was planning. There was purpose, there was setup, there was intent, but the action in criminal law, you have to have mens rea, which is the intent, and actus rea, which is the action. And in that case, I think a shot would have had to be fired. At this
point, what we know is that he was there, he had a plan, but he could have walked away.
Yes.
Because he had not done something that he couldn't walk away from at that point, I think is the difficulty in the legality there.
Right. So it could have been a great conspiracy charge if there was another. Doesn't seem like there was. I think they're going to have difficulty. Not that I don't think that it was an attempted assassination or a plan to assassinate. It seems very
prove
clear
the elements
at
of
this
the
point.
crime.
But for the actual elements of attempted murder, there has to be an action in furtherance of it, not just lying in wait, not just setting up, but an attempt to kill. Thank God we didn't have this. This is why we have the Secret Service and we have others who are investigating the wonderful, amazing Samaritan citizen who stepped in to stop it. So this is what we want, but I don't think everyone's going to be satisfied with the actual charges and convictions that may or may not occur in this case. So let's talk about a final thing and then hop off here. Also in Florida, we've got this sheriff, which I applaud his ideas and his frustration with all of these school shootings, and specifically, most recently, the Georgia school shooting. People are fed up, and I get it. You know, how do we prevent this? It seems like just like the attempt, how do you charge something that didn't actually happen? But how do we prevent it? So we can't jail people who have just thought about it. But how do we prevent it? We don't want to just prosecute. How do we prevent it? So the sheriff has decided in Volusia County that he's going to basically put videos out and pictures out on social media of any child in his county who has been alleged to be making school shooting threats of violence and threats with, you know, in this particular case, it's an 11-year-old boy who allegedly had either fake weapons and or some real weapons and was showing them off to friends, possibly saying he could shoot up the school. And there is video that he's published, the sheriff has published online through social media of this child being put in handcuffs. He's put the name of the child. He's been shown walking in handcuffs to the jail, being put in jail, being, the bars being closed behind him. It's a very shocking video. And in some ways it's like, okay, well, if this were an 18-year-old or above, if this were an adult, then, props to him. I understand it. But there's this child issue. An 11-year-old.
Scared Straight. Do you remember this on TV, Scared Straight?
I don't officially.
Didn't work, right?
No, it didn't work. But it was this whole, and they did it in a very similar way. They would take children who were, we'll say, unruly. There were a spectrum of behaviors that were them, and they would take them into jails or prisons and have the inmates scare them straight, very aggressively.
Yeah.
Physical sometimes of pushing these kids up against the wall and yelling in their face, essentially. This is what this reminds me of.
And Dr. Vile, you had an issue in your own county.
Our city paid millions of dollars
in settlement
over
claims.
A sheriff and a judge who colluded with her, is my understanding. I'm not going to give names, don't want to be sued on this. But I mean, they paid a substantial amount of money by basically going into school and arresting 6th and 7th graders and putting them in jail for a night for,
small crimes.
Crimes, if they were even that, and tended to have a disproportionate number of African American children. And, I don't think they ever arrested the child. Maybe they had no need to, the school superintendent or anybody in authority. These were basically lower income, often minority children. And dang, they better not do this to one of my children or grandchildren. And especially if it isn't true.
Right. Right.
They
if it turns
make
out
one
that this didn't
false
happen.
arrest here, or they make one false, something publicized.
Right.
They are going to be in a heap of trouble. It reminds me now, this didn't involve children, but there was another, it may have been Texas. There was another jailer years ago who got attention for dressing his inmates in pink.
Oh,
remember,
right.
So that they would,
do.
it would make them look less manly.
Yes.
And I don't think it served that purpose. It just, maybe aggravated a few people a little more than otherwise. But
it's supposed to be demeaning and dehumanizing. It's this weird thing of in a lot of the, like with this
Yeah.
guy that he's, throwing, we can talk about the mental culpability of an 11-year-old all day.
Right.
But the idea that like this is somehow going to deter
you're
people
more
from
right.
doing things. I don't think just like with the guy that you're talking about, I know the sheriff you're thinking of, I cannot remember his name, but I don't think the threat of wearing pink clothing is going to prevent people from committing crimes. Right. And I don't think parading around a fifth grader and putting him in jail is necessarily going to prevent other children from making school shooting threats. Right.
If anything, if you have someone who's starving for attention.
Yeah.
You gave them.
I wish I could remember.
Opportunity.
You're telling what a good memory I have, but sometimes it fails me. And there was in Greek history, there was someone who either tried or actually burned down a temple simply because he thought this would make him infamous.
Right.
And there are people, that it would do exactly, you're not always dealing with people who have, all the cards in the deck.
Right.
And this is probably not a good way. I mean,
he's also technically innocent right now. He's been arrested,
right.
but he has not been convicted of a crime.
Right.
And he may even be found, mentally deficient, not because he is, but because he's 11, because of his age.
Right.
So, I understand the frustration of the sheriff of, we're all done with it. Nobody wants school shootings to happen. How do we prevent this? What law can we put in place? What can we do? But this is probably not the way to go. Florida law seems to suggest that juveniles can be put in the public, including their name and their picture if they've been charged with a felony. I don't know if the lawmakers really intended that to include 11-year-olds. But I think this is where we talk about First Amendment. We talk about juveniles. Juveniles normally have a lot more privacy rights, especially in other states, especially in Maryland where we are. Florida seems to be a little less strict on it. I think the guy's playing with fire in the sense that I think he's certainly setting himself up for a lot of civil lawsuits. I think not that I would endorse any child of doing such behavior, but as a parent, there's that, contrast of, oh my gosh, my child is doing this behavior. That's horrible. But my child as an 11-year-old is going to be in the press for the rest of his life with this and will be judged for the rest of his life on what he does as an 11-year-old.
And particularly if he had a gun,
a school shooting.
Yeah, if he had a gun, go after the adult who gave him the gun. If he gave him the gun, where did he get the ammunition?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're in that culture now. We talked about it on the last
And by the way, there's
line.
a very similar case, and I wish I could remember where it was from, but this last week, there was a case where students were taking an exam, and the kid saw another kid with a bullet. And he waited till after the test, about an hour and a half later, to report it to authorities. And when he reported it, they said, "Thank you, you're suspended." Because you didn't promptly tell us about this bullet. And I understand that, but that's nuts.
Right.
The next person, I'm not going to say nobody will ever know that I knew anything.
Right. Right. Why tell? Yeah, it's a really rough culture. Laws, I think, are going to be changing in the next decade around school shootings. And we've even got legal changes this year related to parents' involvement. Dr. Val, I think that's a good idea on that, as we've had the Crumley case. Now we've had the most recent Georgia shooting where the father has been arrested and facing criminal charges for his alleged negligence actions in providing his child a gun for the shooting. It doesn't seem that he knew that the child would be shooting up the school. But in any case, it'll be an interesting decade to figure out what's happening. I hope that we're able to prevent more of these shootings, like the assassination attempt of Donald Trump, like this Florida child. But there's a lot of weighing that we have in democracy. With the democratic republic that we have set up, and what our rights are versus how to prevent crimes. And there's a lot of weighing for that. So as a quick thing, we are the weekly wine. I've been drinking wine on this. I wanted to let everybody know I'm doing a Montgravaat Rosé Wine of France 2023. This is what I've got and I've been drinking. I'm going to pour myself a little extra for today. It's a lovely wine. I know we're more in the winter, but it's reminding me of summer, which I need, and I love rosé, so that's good. What have you two been drinking for our weekly wine session?
I saw Dr. Viles back at it with the Pepsi after we shamed him for his Coca-Cola drinking last time we recorded. And I'm finishing up my summer wines as well. It's still kind of warm here in Georgia. I mean, it still feels like summer, still looks like summer. So I'm finishing up my Franzia Sunset Blush, which has been my favorite.
Peach flavored.
It's like I don't know how to explain it. It does have like a little peach, a little pear.
Of course it does.
Yeah,
Georgia.
Of course. Exactly. We're in Georgia. But my favorite boxed wine is what I'm finishing up before we transition into our more like fall and winter flavors.
Well, we're getting there, and we've got our nails done for we're women and got our nails done for the autumn colors. So anyway, check out the lawunscripted.com. You can find our podcast, both the Law Unscripted and the Legal Weekly Wine, there on YouTube, as well as most audio podcasting systems, including Podbean, Audible, Spotify, that sort of thing. So find us there, find our merchandise there. Law students, find our classes there. We've got some great classes, great material. We're trying to keep up with everything, including the changes. So check us out there. And thank you to my co-hosts, and we will catch you next time on the Legal Weekly Wine.